Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to week number 2. Last week we discussed the importance of reciting a bracha over food, perhaps a little bit of the meaning behind reciting a bracha over food. And we discussed the idea of when you recite an additional bracha at a meal in terms of desserts. What I want to discuss today is, I call it the wandering bracha and the wandering Jew. And that is when and how often and under what conditions you recite additional brachot when you are when you're eating. Someone brings you food, and we'll talk about a couple of scenarios. So let's talk about scenario number one. And that is, let's say a person is watching what they're eating. Let's say, right? So a person says, I decided usually my custom is to have 5 croissants every single morning. I'm only going to have 4, and I watch what my calorie intake. And after they've eaten 4, they smell the 5th one. Do they need to recite a bracha on that 5th croissant? Or not? Do they have to recite another bracha or not another bracha? What do you think? Did they say bracha achrona? No, they say bracha achrona. They've always had 5, but today they're like, listen, I have a calorie, I'm being conscious, I can't eat that 5th one, it tips me over my point allocations for Weight Watchers, and therefore I'm only going to have 4. After 4, they see the 5th one, it starts talking to them, and they have no choice. They begin to reach over to try and take it. You have to recite a bracha over such food. What does your gut tell you? No, because? So again, usually 5, but even though they said, I am not going to eat 5 today. Right? Okay, it's a chazaka. Okay. But could a person not say, how if a person every day eats, I don't know. So the truth is, when it comes to chazak with eating, the question is what establishes the chazaka, right? Is it the fact that I eat bread every day means I got to eat bread on the 4th day too? You obligated to eat bread? No. So the chazak wouldn't necessarily apply in this case to eating. If I have a chazaka that every Tuesday night I eat pizza. One Tuesday night you don't eat pizza, you have to try nedarim, right? I don't think it establishes such a usher to order fleshik. I don't think so. I don't think it is. Okay, so you have to think about that. Let's also think about for a minute. You come home, and your husband or your father says, "I made dinner tonight." And when you ask what's for dinner, they say lasagna. Lasagna, let's say a dairy lasagna. So with noodles and with cheese and with some vegetables. Okay. All of a sudden, not only did they make lasagna, they also made a cake. You asked what was for dinner, and they told you lasagna. And all of a sudden, a cake. You also made a cake? I had absolutely no idea. But such a person would recite a bracha on that cake. They had absolutely no idea that it was coming. A better question is, what happens when they walk in the house and they eat the lasagna and the cake is baking? It's not even made yet. How long does it take to bake a cake? Let me tell you. How long does it take?
Depends on the cake.
Depends on the cake. Marnie, your father's a baker. How long does your father?
Like 30 minutes.
30 minutes to an hour?
Yeah.
30 minutes to an hour? Okay, fine. Wonderful. You walk into the house, you eat lasagna. While you're eating lasagna, a cake goes into the oven. So you make your mizonos on your lasagna. The cake is not made yet. It's in the oven. You take a long time to eat lasagna because there's soup and there's salad and you're schmoozing. All of a sudden the oven goes off. Bing, bing, bing. The cake is ready. What do? Did you make another bracha on that cake, or does it count the lasagna? What might be the problem? You made your bracha on the lasagna. What form is the cake in? Liquid is mush. Does the bracha on your lasagna count for something that's not even created yet? So if you're going to tell me in the first scenario that when you walk into the house and you're told there's lasagna for dinner and there's lasagna for dinner, you had no idea about the cake. You want to say, well, it's whatever part of the meat. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit. What about if the cake wasn't formed? Cake didn't exist. I'll give you another example. You eat your lasagna, and 10 minutes after you eat the lasagna, there's a knock at the door. It's your neighbor. I hear it's your birthday. I brought you a cake. Where's the cake from? Sobeys, my house. What about in that case? If you make another bracha on that cake that comes from outside, it comes from your neighbor, it comes to Sobeys that was delivered. Okay, so these are questions we have to we're going to analyze a little bit this morning, and let's begin by taking a look at source number 1. So I want to just mention this shir is in memory of Lilui Nishmas Rachel Bas Tzipora Allah Shalom. His first year site is a couple of days from now. So the Rambam writes in the laws of Brachos the following: Ein mevarchin al ha'ochel min kol ha'ochlin velo al ha'mashke min kol ha'mashkin. You don't make a bracha on food or on liquid ad sheyavo lefanav, until it's in front of you. V'im berech, if you recite a bracha, v'achar kach hevi lefanav, and then later on you bring it, and someone brings it to you, tzarich lachzor v'levarech, you must make another bracha. But we'll see if we hold this way lahalacha. But the Rambam writes that if a person has food in front of them, so let's use our example on the table today, which are being totally devoured, are croissants, right? They're on the table, and people start eating. Then all of a sudden, a few minutes later, someone walks in with a birthday cake, says this Rambam, what do you need to do? You'd have to make another bracha. And he gives another example. Let's go on. No tel ochel uberach alav. A person washes their hands, or he gets a hold of food, uberach, he makes a bracha. So let's use an apple. Makes a borei priya eitz on an apple. V'nafa miyado. Bracha dash machlam, borei priya eitz, all of a sudden, slips out of his hand. Or v'nisraf, or instantaneous combustion, which is pretty neat, but I don't know what happened. But let's say, lightning bolt comes and zaps your apple, and you survive. Or shishat nahar, or all of a sudden water comes and there's a current and the water sweeps away your apple down the river, down the stream, and you're not going to dive in after it. It's gone. What are you supposed to do? You make a bracha boy praise on your apple and it drops out of your hand, or by the way, and it's disgusting, maybe, right? Interesting question. So why don't you just pick it up? The water sweeps it away. V'nisraf. Right, all these cases, by the way, of spontaneous combustion, the water sweeps it away, are all cases that it's gone forever. What is the nafel, that it drops and falls? So what if it drops and falls? It must be that it drops and falls, it gets so disgusting that you're not going to eat it, right? Or you make a bracha, you look at your apple, and you see eyes looking at you from a worm, right? I don't know, do worms have eyes?
You see the worm without the eyes.
See the worms without the eyes. Okay, fine. You see a little tail wagging at you, like, I'm not, and you're like totally repulsed. You're like, what are you supposed to do? You made a bracha. Let's continue. No tel acher, you take another one, take another apple, v'chozer u'mevarech alav, and you must recite another bracha. Afal pi shehu moso hamin, even if it's the same species. Meaning, according to the Rambam, you make a bracha on an apple, that apple is gone, for however that happens, take it. You want it then, so I gotta have my apple, an apple a day. It's very good for you. Keeps the doctor away? Keeps the doctor away, right? Sarich lomar, what must you say? Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuso Olam V'Oler. Okay, it's another halachic idea. It could be that you violated, making a bracha of atala is a violation. Exactly what you're violating is unclear. D'oraisa, d'Rabbanan, it's not a topic for now. But you said a bracha, you never ate that apple, it's gone. Take another one, you make a bracha. Before you make a bracha, you should say Baruch Shem. A bracha rishona kadesh lo lahoti shem shema levatala. Because you're moti shem shema levatala, you said God's name in vain on that first bracha because your apple has disappeared or is unedible. Then the Rambam continues. Before the Rambam continues, I want to ask you a question. We've seen so far your apple falling, new bracha according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, if you make a bracha on an apple, and someone brings perhaps another apple, or maybe a pear, the Rambam would say to make another bracha on it. I want to ask you another question. How do you make a bracha on a water fountain? Why? What are you supposed to do? Like, Baruch Atah, right? What are you supposed to do exactly? So the Rambam's example will be a water fountain will be what's called, you're going down to the stream and you're going to have water. Right? So how do you drink from a water fountain? What's the problem? Whatever bracha you're going to make it on, what's going to happen to that water? It's going to be gone. Right? So remember our first case was according to Rambam, you bring a new apple that you didn't have beforehand, or maybe a new fruit, or we have that cake example, make a new bracha. Apple falls out of your hand, make a new bracha. What's he going to say about water flowing? What's he going to say? Make a new bracha. I make a new bracha. Make a bracha your life. Baruch Atah Baruch Atah, you'll be stuck. Let's read in the Rambam. I'm going to appreciate now this Rambam. Look at the end of source number 1. Third line from the end after the comma. Omeid Adam al Amas Hamayim. A person stands by basically the shores of the water. Umevarech v'shoseh. Make a bracha and you drink. You're going to say, what? Af al pi, even though shamayim shayu lefanav, even though the water that was in front of you, b'sha'as habracha, at the time of the bracha, einam hamayim sheshata, that's not the water you're drinking. That's impossible. Mipnei, why is it then okay? Hilkach sheniskaven tchila. That was your intent. You know that 100% of the time, when you make a bracha on water that flows, you know with 100% certainty that will not be the bracha that you're drinking. But since you know, says the Rambam, that is the case, then that's fine. Now the Rambam is probably a Gemara. Okay? So we see here something very important. That the Rambam has a very interesting approach. The Rambam's approach is 99%, or actually the truth is unequivocally. Whatever is in front of you, that's what counts. There's food out there that's brought, you're going to need to make another bracha. Oh, what about the water that flows? Why? Because that is 100% of the time. Is it 100% of the time that when you have croissants on the table, another cake is going to show up? No. Is it 100% of the time that you have an apple that falls out of your hand to think that? Of course not. And therefore, unless it's unequivocal, like the water that flows, you're going to need to make another bracha. That is the approach of the Rambam. Let's see what the halacha is. Take a look, please, at... We'll jump down to... We'll skip 2, we'll go to 3, we'll write down to the halacha. Ein mevarchin, in the Shulchan Aruch, lo ala ochav lo ala mashke, ad shavu lefanav. So already you can see the language of the Shulchan Aruch is very similar to the Rambam. So again, you don't make a bracha, not on food, not on drink, until it's in front of you. So we see here, by the way, you might see exceptions, when it'd be okay, you wouldn't make a new bracha, but there's no question that ideally, a person should make sure that their food's on their table. We'll see a couple of cases where for sure it'd be okay. Let's continue, we'll come back. Berech v'charkach v'lefanav. A person makes a bracha, and then people bring it to you. Tzarich levarech pamacheres. You need to make another bracha. Aval, time out. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Misha berach al perosh lefanav. A person makes a bracha on apples that are in front of him. For example, v'achar kach hevi'u lo yoser moso hamin. A person says, you ate one apple. That's not sufficient. Here's another apple. Here's another apple. Or mimin acher sheberchasa kuberchasa rishona, or a different species, but the bracha is the same. So the person doesn't bring you an apple, they bring you a pear, or a peach, or a plum. It's the season of good fruit, right? Just which is the same bracha we said before, which was the eighth in the apple. Eino tzarich levarech. You don't have to make another bracha. Interesting. We do not hold like the Rambam. The Shulchan Aruch is going to say the following, and I want to ask you a question. Why? Can someone explain to me what is the logic of the Shulchan Aruch? Why is it that here's an apple, it's on my table, I make a bracha, I sit really slowly, and someone brings me a fig, or a peach or a plum, I don't need to make another bracha on it. Why not? Why? Why? What's the rationale behind it? The peach is over there, the plum is over there. It's in my fridge or it's on my counter. Why? How come? Anybody? It's too early? Those another coffee? Should have coffee. Forget the oranges and the croissants. Let's need coffee. Anyone take a stab at it? Sorry, Epstein. Choose always a volunteer. No one wants to. What's the rationale? Come on. Don't worry. Take a chance.
I'm thinking to myself,
yeah.
You're continually eating, and when you saw the fruit elsewhere, you had intention that you're going to keep eating.
Okay, so you said a lot of things that were loaded, that were very good. The first thing you said was, I saw the food. What about if I didn't see the food on the counter? 2, I saw the food, therefore I tend to eat. How about I didn't see the food? I went from the front doors to my dining room table, to eating an apple, to the peaches and plums that are in the kitchen that are brought to me. Is that a prerequisite, having seen them beforehand? What do you think? I get it. I mean, if you see it and you know they're there and there's a potential for it, I hear it. What about if you don't see it? Or the opposite. Your child, your mother, your whoever says to you, surprise, I just bought peaches, and gives you a peach. You had no idea there were peaches. The peaches just started. Maybe you heard Shechianu on the peach. That's a question for another time. Right? Yeah.
Because we live in a society that we know there's more food around.
Oh.
So,
so you're saying we graze, we're like animals, which is fine, and we graze, and just because you're going to have an apple doesn't mean that you've locked yourself into this apple and this apple. But it's common in the society that we live in the world that we live in, the world of affluence, we have so many products and so many foods. You have an apple, you can have a peach, and that is the custom and the manner of how we eat in modern society today. So you do not need to know about the apple in the other room. What did you think? Does that make sense to you? That makes sense to you. Okay, so that could be the logic, and by the way, not even our society. 500 years ago, the Shulchan Aruch seems to imply that if you make a bracha on an apple and someone brings you a peach, then you would not need to recite another bracha.
This is only if somebody brings you peach,
Oh, you get up and get it yourself. Yeah. People were very into being served in those days. Right, that's always the language here. Hey, you notice that, right? That's how they actually got up to get it. The question is, why not? So, let's use a sexist example, just for our purpose. Let's say it's the husband, and the wife is serving. Right? What would be very interesting, I think this is what you're maybe implying, what about if your neighbor shows up and brings you something? If you decide to get it yourself.
You didn't think before you wanted a piece, and now you do.
Okay, that's a really good question. That's a very good question, because that might be a little bit different. I'll tell you why. What's the difference between being served and taking things yourself? What's the difference between being served and taking things yourself? What? Okay, so when it's served to you, someone gives you something, you often do say yes. Right? Okay, good. What advantage might there be from a grazing perspective? I hate to use that term, but it works very well. What advantage is there when people are serving you foods versus if you're going to get it yourself? If you'll bring you food, do you know when the end is? Do you know what's in the fridge? You have no idea. So when you make that first bracha, you could argue, I don't know whether I'm going to be brought to me. So your bracha is left open. But if you yourself are going to take that apple, I open the fridge, or I look at the counter, I see what's there, and this is what I choose. So you could argue that when you get food yourself, it's to the exclusion of anything else from my fridge or my counter, right? Right? So that's perhaps why Hevu Lefanav might open up a greater Pandora's box to allowing you to take more of those fruits. Right? Okay. Let's take a look at source number 4. I was going to elaborate on this, and this is important. I'm going to mention things that we've already said before. Tzarech levarach pam acheres. Source 4. Here we go. Va'afilu. Here's the reason why. Kevan de ato aleihem b'shas bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah in source number 4. Kivain, sorry. Thank you. Ato aleihem b'shas bracha. Gam ken lo mahane. A person has intent on other foods at the time they make the bracha, it's not going to help him. Why? Kivan sha'az lo hayu lefanav lo haya lebracha al ma l'chul. Says the Mishnah Berurah, really, and you'll see he's going to modify this in a minute. Mishnah Berurah is going to say that a person makes a bracha on a fruit. It wasn't that's in front of him. This pear is somewhere else. It wasn't on the table. This bracha didn't apply to other foods that's somewhere else. And he contrasted this with you want to contrast this to the water that's flowing. The spherulate the hatam kevan shebevadayavo hamayim negdo. Since he knows for a fact that the water is going to come, you'll find if it's in front of him. The mayim ashenki and hacha, as opposed to here, the totally the das acherim. And it comes, says the Mishnah Berurah, he wants to just explain the rationale for a minute on why the bracha counts for only things that's in front of you. I don't know what's going to be brought to me. It's not dependent on me. It's dependent on an external factor. What people are going to bring me. Therefore, my brachas are only what I see in front of me. Let's continue reading. Let's say it's placed in a teva, in a box, in an ark, in a cupboard. And after the bracha is brought to him, you don't have to make another bracha. Why? It's prepared for him. It's not up to others, and not up to others. So Berurah wants to entertain this idea that what about if the food item is in a cupboard somewhere? Now, here's an interesting question. Is he? What's this case? In this case, he's not even holding this food. He's making a bracha, and the food is sitting, the food is sitting somewhere else in a pantry. Bracha d'Amechalam, boy Priya eats, opens his fridge, takes the apple and eats it. Or is it talking about a case where no, he has food in front of him, and there's other foods in the pantry or in the cupboards. Right? It's not clear exactly what is the case in this Mishnah Berurah. So, the Pri Megadim, Mishnah Berurah quotes the Pri Megadim, then the following. Tehu adin, ki kol kula degavna, shehu, in all these cases, vadai sheyuva etzlo, kegon shu becheder hasamuch lo, gamkein ein tzarich lachzor levarech. It appears, what Mishnah Berurah is saying, and quoting this Pri Megadim, that if it's in the cupboard next door, it's in the pantry, it's in the fridge, you don't really need to make another bracha. Meaning, even though it's not better to have it on the table, but if it's in a pantry or a cupboard or a fridge, it's like, okay. So what is the case of when someone brings it that you have to make another bracha? It appears that's talking about a case where maybe someone's next door. That is the extreme case of totally b'tas acherim. It appears that if you're sitting at a dining room table and you're making a bracha over food, and there's other foods perhaps that make the same bracha in a pantry, in a cupboard, or wherever the case may be, you would not need to make another bracha over that food. However, af lechatchila bevada yesh lizar bezeh. You should be careful. Then even says, really the mitzvah is to hold it in your hand b'shas habracha, which appears to even imply that even b'di'eved, if you make a bracha and you're not holding the food, it's still okay b'di'eved. Okay, that's what he seems to be saying, and maybe that is the case that he's talking about. That when you look at a cupboard and you let's use the fridge. You open your fridge, you see an apple, and you take it. But the ever that is okay, even that scenario. So we see it's a complicated Mishnah Berurah. It seems to say a number of different things. But I want to just siphon off from here are a few important rules. One is lechatchila, everything should be on your table. You should know about it. That's for sure the best. So that's the most important approach, I think, is that way, and you should hold it in your hand for sure. We discussed that last week. You should hold the food item, or at least know about what's in the other pantries or the other fridges at the same time. Turn the page for a minute, if you can, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch says in Surah 7. Kol davar shemavarach alav la'achol ol harech bo, make a bracha over food or smell. Tzarich la'ochlo b'yaminok shemavarach, you hold it in your right hand when you make a bracha. Again, but if you don't, you'd be okay, but you definitely should hold it in your hand to begin with. Water that's flowing, obviously that's going to be impossible. Maybe it is better to cup it with your hand. I don't know if that's going to fly in water fountains at all. It's going to be pretty uncomfortable and wet, and it'll be pretty hard to, how are you going to hold it? Yeah, question.
I'm wondering, you have a meal, you're not the host, or, is somebody's going to bring you, and traditionally they bring you, let's say it's a Shabbos meal, A,
yes.
B, C, and D, and there's usually dessert. So when you make the bracha hamotzi, right, you're intending, maybe you don't intend there to be dessert, but they bring a dessert.
So that's, okay, so we're,
yeah,
great, that's a great question. Hold on, we're going to see that in number 9. Well, great question. We're going to talk about if you're a guest somewhere else, it might be a little bit different. It might be much more simpler to some extent.
If your mother, if you're...
gives you food. Okay, let's jump to number 9. Look at 9. Im achar sheberach ala pas. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. I thought that was a different case. My mistake. I thought I have the case here. Oh, we are going to see it number 10. Okay, we'll hold on to that. There's no question that das is going to play, and intent is going to play a very important role. And the real issue, and this is what we encourage people to do, is when you make your bracha originally, better to have in mind, I'm making a bracha to my apple, and whatever types of fruit people bring me, maybe it's better to have it on the table, or to know that it's there because you've seen it. That could even be for sure better. But it appears that the general intent is when you make a bracha that you're grazing, you're going to be eating more foods. If, and this goes back to what we started with, if you say unequivocally, though, I am eating 1 apple, before you make your 8th bracha, this is the only apple that I'm eating because I'm running out the door, or because I'm watching my weight, or because I don't like fruits, I'm doing this just because, and in the end you want to eat a 2nd apple, that's going to be a very problematic situation. Maybe better not to eat that 2nd apple, maybe better to make a bracha on that apple. It's unclear. But it appears that the default is that we do graze, and for sure, and I thought I brought that, but if you are at someone's house and you are not in control of anything, or if you're at a Shabbos table, and people are just bringing you foods, whether it's your own family members or friends, then you have absolutely no idea what's coming. The assumption is the bracha is applying to everything. In terms of desserts, this was last week's topic, the problem is going to be, even if you know that ice cream is coming at the end of a meal, the bread might not cover ice cream, because ice cream is not considered part of the meal, even if you know it's there, because ice cream comes just to clean your palate, just for something sweet. It's not part of the meal. Bread only includes in it food items that actually fill you and satiate you. Candy doesn't really satiate you, despite what my kids claim. Ice cream doesn't really satiate you either. Cakes would be perhaps a different story. But usually the shahakos, questions about fruit at the end of the meal, also might not satiate you. So generally speaking, on fruit desserts, that was our conclusion last week, and on candy and ice cream, shahakol desserts, you probably should make a bracha, as opposed to the cake dessert, you would not make a bracha. That probably was included in the matzah, even despite that you know even that it's coming.
What if it wasn't a dama dessert?
No, dama probably, actually vegetables, believe it or not, are actually considered part of the meal. But fruit isn't. Unless, again, I mentioned this last week, if you have grapefruit for an appetizer, that might come actually as part of the courses. I come to enhance a person's appetite. So that's what's called an appetizer, right? Hence an appetite. So okay, let's. I actually want to show you source number 8. As far as I was able to ascertain from the research that I did, and I'm not saying this is accurate, might be the first source that actually says and gives you a greater license to be lenient when it comes to grazing. Up until now, I've said it appears that way, and that's the person's intent. 8 says it. This is from the Shulchan Aruch Harav. This is from the famous Baal Tanya. Goes back a few hundred years. And look what he says. No one said this, I believe, until he did. I couldn't figure out where he got it from. Here, turn to the second paragraph. A person makes a bracha and his dot was on the second item. And even, says the Shulchan Aruch, if his intent really, he didn't know about this other pear that was in the fridge. Meaning, if he kind of maybe knew, then it's fine. But if it's like an anti-da'as, right? I am only eating this apple. Oh, I would never eat that pear. And you decide, I've never eaten anything else. So I'm bringing you that pear, that nectarine, even though you'd have to make another bracha on that fruit, because before you made that first bracha, you're like, I am only eating this fruit. I've never in my life, I eaten 2 fruits in one day. Never in my life. I'll never do that ever. Don't take a shvuah, it's a problem. And then all of a sudden, someone shows up with that second fruit, then maybe in such a case you would have to make another bracha. So, it's a, let's continue that second line. I'll show you why. A 5th word from the end. Aval. Im yish adayin lefanav mimin harishon. Let's say you still have a little bit of your apple on your table. Shevu lefanav min acher, and when they bring another fruit, adome larishon, like similar to the first fruit, kigon sheshnei minei peros, like the 2 fruits, or shnei minei mashkin, or 2 drinks, ein tzarich lachso levarach. If you still have a little bit of your apple, and someone brings you a pear, you would not, for sure, unequivocally, not have to make another bracha. Why? The drinking of that first item, you're not breaking your intent. A person is eating to continue eating versus drinking, they continue to drink. So here we have another important rule, and the problem is that after you've had that first apple, the problem with that second fruit is you're finished. Maybe you had a Monday, you're done eating. It's not so crazy. I had an apple, I ate my apple, I'm done. Then you bring a pear. Okay, I'll eat it. But maybe you really should make another bracha since it was never your intent. You didn't know it existed. So that is why, for sure, if you still have a little bit of your apple left over, then bring out the pear. So if you remember to be a guest in if you're serving somebody, you tell them either ahead of time, I got lots of food for you, or before they finish their apple, say, maybe you consider a pear. That for sure is definitely better to do. Which is a bit of a chiddush. You don't normally think that way. Again, we usually graze, but definitely it's better to either have the fruits on the table, and rub the fruits, or offer the fruits. Definitely in terms of intent, is probably much better to do it that way. Okay. Let's talk about the baking of the cake. What do you think? What do you think the baking of the cake? What does your gut tell you? Your cake's not ready, right? Remember to go back to original case. If you're eating lasagna, the cake is not formed. It's in your house. You smell this cake. You know it's there, but it's in the form of mush. What bracha would you make on mush? I guess shako. It's raw, right? You make mazonos. It's not cooked. Maybe you would make a bracha rao because it's bad for you. I don't know. Raw dough. Isn't like a flavor, like cookie. Does that really cookie dough look really cookie dough? They just call it cookie dough.
Cookie dough is good.
Cookie dough without egg is okay. If you're eating it with egg,
that's a problem because raw eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Thank you. Tell them why.
Because it's the raw egg.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah. People eat it.
So like that.
People eat it and they get a stomachache?
I know people who eat it.
And they're fine. Okay.
Yeah, I eat it too. Like that's what they say.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Part of the rule of making cookies is supposed to taste butter.
Oh, is it really?
not, you don't do it right. It's go.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm not aware of these things. I've never break my entire life. And what was that?
It's an unwritten rule.
Unwritten rule. Okay, it's fine. That's very important. The Masorah, how to bake, how to cook. So, what do? The cake wasn't formed. You made your bracha on your pasta. Let's say you knew it was coming. You smelt it. It was in the oven. Or you know that it's there. You made a rizonos on lasagna. For sure you include it. Would you make another bracha on this cake? What do you think and why? Yeah.
I'm going by the key word you're saying, think. I know in my brain there's a cake coming.
Mm-hmm.
So my brain is telling me I'm going to eat that cake while I'm eating my lasagna. So if I know that I'm going to eat the cake...
Even though it's not formed yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Would that be different than if a person knocks on the door and shows up with a cake?
To me it would, because you didn't know that person was coming.
Okay, so you didn't know it. And how about if the person calls and says, I'll bring over a cake in 10 minutes?
Isn't it still the same rule as last time? Like, you're not eating it because you're hungry. You're eating it there.
No, but cake satiates you. Cake satiates you whether you like it or not. There's no satiate you. You eat unlimited candy. You don't get full. You get full from candy.
No, but then you said last week
Yeah.
that if you like have a meal and then you have dessert, you have to make a new bracha. It's not satiating.
Right, but probably for Mazonos food items.
Oh.
Yeah, probably different story. Yeah, for Mazonos items, yeah. So, there's the cake in the oven. There's the surprise cake that arrives. And there's the, I know the cake is going to arrive from my neighbor in 10 minutes. 3 different scenarios. And should we take a vote? Should we put people on the spot here? So the cake that's being baked in the oven from one person that you know it's there, you know it's coming, that's sufficient.
You thought you were only eating lasagna?
Okay, right. So then the question is what the grazing rule. That, once you're making a bracha on one food, like all other mizonos are wrapped up in there, so to speak. You don't know what's coming, so that's why it's better, definitely, to take that extra few seconds and say, I'm making a bracha on my lasagna, and keeping in mind all other mizonos that are going to arrive. I'll tell you an example when we do this. It just occurs to me right now. What do we say at the Seder when we eat the karpas? Make a boy priadama and keep in mind the more later. Understand? We know it's coming. Right? We all know it's coming. It came last year. It came the year before. Unfortunately, we're still eating tomorrow. Right? It might even be on the table. No? It might even be on the table. Seder plate, perhaps. Yet why do we still say, keep in mind? So it's on the table. Maybe you don't have to say keep in mind. That might be the truth. But we still make a comment. We're so firm at the Seder. We say, keep in mind the maror. Right? Why not say, don't keep in mind the maror? Why don't we say it like this? Don't keep in mind the maror. And make another bracha for pidama. Okay, why don't we want to do that? That's a great question. That's not for now, though. Because you might know it's coming, therefore, you make a bracha. But we see that we like this idea of keeping things in mind is the better way of doing things. So, let's go to sources 9 and 10, and we're going to hopefully be able to answer some of our questions. Here we go, source 9. If after a person makes bracha on bread, someone brings me food and I'm not dependent on them. What does dependent on them means? I'm not in kollel. If I'm in kollel, my mommy and daddy send me something, maybe I don't make a bracha on it. I'm joking a little bit, but not so much. Right? Let's just say, meaning, I'm not somech aleihem, meaning that it's my neighbor. My neighbor, my cousin, my sibling from another brings the food over. I didn't have intention on this. Doron is a present, on this gift. Even though what's being brought to me are things that I usually eat with bread. Hummus. You're eating with bread, either on bread or with bread. Like a chicken, you just eat with a meal. You must make another bracha. Why? A guy shows up, Didn't know you were going to show up at my house. The guy shows up with a cake. Happy birthday. Happy surprise. Oh my goodness. Even if I washed. Right? Even if I washed, he's saying you have to make a bracha on this food. Let's say it's chicken. Let's finish reading first. Haga. Says Rama. No! Lo ra'isi nisharim bazeh. I've never seen anybody who's careful with this, says Ashkenazic Rama. After at the time, what's the reason? Distam das adam al koma shemevi'in lo bes'uda. When a person sits down to eat, says Rama, this is a very important principle. A person says, I sit down to a meal, I have no idea what's coming. And my intent is on any food. What about the food comes from my neighbor? Included. What about the food falls from the sky? Included. What about the food is baked in the oven? Included. This is a very important Ramah, because it's different to some extent than what we've seen before. This Ramah is saying, and this is what I want to be very careful. Listen to his language. His language is, your intent is on eating everything when you eat a seudah, a meal. You're not snacking, right? You're washing, you're eating bread, you're having a seudah. When you have a meal, you're like, I have no idea what's coming. I'm washing on bread. I said before, whatever's going to be included would be included. Let's read this Mishnah Berurah before we can answer all of our questions. Ratzinu lomar, shahaya dasu shelo lishtos ela soakos. Let's say, for example, a person says the following. A person says, I am going to drink water, and 1 cup of water, v'lo yoser. I call this the anti-intent. 1 cup of water, don't want 2 cups of water. Or wine. 1 cup of wine, no, I'm having 2 cups of wine. And by the way, we're snacking. Ela shachaganim lishtos od. He decides he wants to drink more. Kasav ataz du adin linyan achila. Same idea with eating. Kagon shekana la'atzmo lechem echad lochlo. Person buys himself 1 loaf of bread, kulo. Al das ze berech. And when he makes the bracha, hamotz lechem min haaretz, his intent was to have 1 loaf of bread. V'achar kach nisav alechol od. And he's hungry. Oh man, that loaf of bread just doesn't cut it for me. This 1 slice of bread doesn't cut it for me. V'sholeach liknos od. He tells his child, do me a favor, go back to the makola, go back to Sobeys. I need a loaf of bread. I'm hungry. Tzarich levarech shenis hamotzi. Then a person makes a bracha hamotzi. We see here, very important, the Mishnah Berurah is saying, when you have anti-kavana, when I say, I am only going to eat this 1 loaf of bread, he eats his loaf of bread, and he's still hungry. And he says, son, go out and buy me another loaf of bread. What about if he has another loaf of bread in his pantry? Interesting question. Let's read this bracket. Vatam. The masav mochichin loya bedasolecho kim alachem shekana. His intent is showing that he only wants to eat the bread that he purchased. Doesn't get ayakona yosi would have bought more. Ela shachagach nis avalocho got hungry. Here we go. Im yesh lo babayis lachem. If a person has bread in their home, vechotech lo chaticha lecho, and he takes a loaf of bread, he cuts off a slice. Lecholosa. V'achar kach rotza lachtos od, and he says, 1 slice of bread. I'm so hungry. Ein ze nimlach, the derech adam kenu. This is not considered additional. That's the way humans are. We graze. We think we're going to be full on 1 slice of bread. We're not. We want more. He thinks at the time the bracha will be enough with 1 slice. He realizes he's not full. He wants more. So let's summarize what we've seen and apply our situations. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if a person sends his kid out to buy another loaf of bread, you're going to be in trouble, you have to make another bracha. But if you're in your own home and you think you're going to have 1 slice of bread, and you're going to want more, you would not need to now make a bracha, even if to some extent you have anti-kavana. But you have more bread, I'm only 1 slice, I would not need to make another bracha on the rest of my bread, because human beings the normal default setting of a human being is they usually want more food. We're Jews. Question.
Do you have to bench before if you're going to buy more?
No, you wouldn't have to. No, that you wouldn't have to bench. You wouldn't have to bench. No. Good question. Okay, let's summarize. Let's go through our cases and let's see what we've seen so far. Here we go. The person always eats. A person says, "Today I'm on Weight Watchers diet and I'm only eating 4 croissants." And they have the 5th one. Do they make another bracha on that 5th one? What do we see from here? You would not make another bracha on that 5th one. Why? Because even anti-kavana might not help. Because that is the nature of human beings, to eat a little bit more. That appears to be the halacha l'maisa when it comes to food. What about if you have fruits? By the way, what about if you have fruits? Make a bracha on an apple, and someone brings you a pear, peaches, or a plum. It's better to have it on the table. It's better to know about it. It's better for sure when you make the bracha on Eid, including all fruit that might come your way. But if it would to show up either, no, it's not either. I want to strike that. If it shows up from your fridge or from your counter, you would not make another bracha on that food item. If it's the same category of fruits. What about if a cake shows up from Sobeys? What about the cake that's being baked in the oven? It appears that you would not need to make another bracha on that cake being baked in the oven, since it was covered under your mizonos of your lasagna. Why is that? You knew about it. It sometimes comes. That appears to be the reason. By the way, unlike the Rambam, as we saw in the opening act, source number 1. And what about if someone shows up with a Sobeys cake? We're going to say it's going to depend. If you're in the middle of a meal and someone shows up with Sobeys cake, you would not need to make an additional bracha on that Sobeys cake or that additional cake that was baked by your neighbor and they're bringing over to your home if you love a meal. What will happen if you're having a little bit of cake and then someone brings that cake from outside? That's going to be an interesting question what to do. Because it's not in your house. Is your intent on cake that's going to come from outside? Is that even possible to do? That's going to be a bit of a question. For sure, though, if you only have one loaf of bread and you send someone to go buy you another loaf of bread, that's also going to be a situation where you're going to need to recite another bracha. Okay, if we answered all of our questions? Again, the most important thing is to definitely know about things, have intent when you make brachos, to keep in mind other food, better to put things on the table. Yeah, question?
Did you say in source 9 that all these things only apply to a Suda?
No. So when it's a Seuda and outside food is coming, then it's counted in. Yes. It's a suffix, it's a big problem. If I'm
outside was coming, that's not good?
I'll give you an example. I make a bracha on a water bottle that I have in my house, and someone shows up in my house with a water bottle. Oh, I'm really thirsty. That's going to be a big problem because you drink from the water bottle. Zir shahakol that was on your water bottle, that can account for their water bottle they brought in. That's not going to be so simple because it comes from outside. When it's a Seuda, when your mind is for Seuda, what's your intent for Seuda? On any food that shows up, whether it's from your neighbor, or from your oven, or from your fridge, or from your whatever it is. Okay, desserts are a different issue. That's going to be a problem with. There's one thing that I want to mention, and we'll end with this. Can you lose a bracha? What do I mean? This happens a lot when I drink coffee. You make a bracha over your cup of coffee in your house. Then you go to your car. Does the bracha shahakol that you made in your house die when you leave your house? And you must make another bracha in the car? Or not?
Yeah.
Answer is, when it comes to shahakols die. They get severed. Not a bracha. But that topic of shirin makom, of changing locations and what tethers with you, is a topic for another time. But that's just quickly, shahakols probably do die. It could be that mazonos might not die. That's the short answer. Next week, Rabbi Churchin will be giving the shiur. And then the following week is Red Cropping. Okay? That's the to the order of events.